Hey everyone, this is Ron with Bridgecom Systems. My call sign is KC0QVT and I'm coming at you live from Bridgecom HQ in Smithville, Missouri. And on tap today, we've got a great show for you. We are going to program a BCR repeater from scratch, and we are going to then use our AnyTone 878 to communicate with that. I'm going to show you guys how this all works in analog mode. And as you guys know, hopefully, amateur GMRS commercial radio operators, we use repeaters every day, and they're an integral part of our everyday life. And I thought it would be great to mix things up. I know we've been focusing a lot on DMR, and show you guys what's going on the repeater side of things, and especially in the context of using our radios. So I've got some show notes here that hopefully there's a link that you'll see that Tanner will put up for you guys that I'm going to follow through and just talk to you a bit about repeaters and of course the AnyTone in the context of the repeater. So what let me back up a moment and just give you a quick just do some quick housekeeping. I wanted to make you guys aware we are doing another giveaway called the Share Your Shack giveaway, and this has been just really been an awesome giveaway for us because you guys are sharing your pictures of all your shack, and you're posting it up and entering the giveaway, and we're seeing it on our Facebook group page. So if you're not a member yet, we invite you to join. But we're going to be giving away, the grand prize winner will get an AnyTone 578 UV3 Pro, a 578 UV Plus, like what you see right here, Skybridge dual band digital hotspot, plug and play programming for both radios, international and USA hotspot super code plugs, tri-band mobile antenna, the BCS 200 speaker mic that goes with the radio, extra battery and belt clip, and Bridgecom University subscription for both the mobile and the HT, total value of almost $1,600. You must have a valid amateur radio call sign to enter, and whoever wins that's going to get a nice package. But anyway, Share Your Shack. You use the hashtag Share Your Shack and go to our Facebook group page, and I don't know, Tanner can tell you how to enter that. But anyway, big winner coming up, or big giveaway coming up, and whoever wins. So anyway, just jump into the repeater. Let me talk to you real quick about the repeater that we offer. We offer 3 different repeaters here at Bridgecom. We've been doing repeaters since 2004. We offer a UHF repeater, or a 70 centimeter repeater as it's called in amateur radio. We also offer a 2-meter repeater or a VHF repeater, and then we also offer another VHF repeater that operates in the 220 spectrum. So we have 3 different flavors, and they're called the BCR series, which is obviously Bridgecom repeater. And I have on display here a UHF or 70 centimeter machine that I am going to set up for you. And this repeater is capable of producing output power between about 5 and 40 watts. It can do a little bit more than 40 watts, but it is a commercial repeater. In other words, it's gone through the type acceptance. The transmitter's been tested to operate in the commercial area of the spectrum, which is 450 to 470. It also goes all the way down to 400 megahertz, and that includes the amateur radio spectrum of 420 to 449.995. Keep in mind, as amateurs, if you operate a transmitter in the amateur region of the spectrum, it does not have to undergo FCC testing. But there is requirements that you should abide by in terms of how it works, but it does not require an FCC ID in order to transmit in amateur radio, and that's the beauty of being an amateur. That's why they give us that spectrum. We're not constrained by commercial requirements. Now, given this will work in 450 to 470, the transmitter does need to go through testing, which you oftentimes hear about Part 90. And of course, that's where you get this FCC ID that you can see on repeaters or your transmitters that have been tested. And of course, that raises the cost of the unit, but you're getting a good rock solid repeater that's undergone testing. And this repeater supports up to 16 channels. Now you might want to ask, well, why 16 channels on a repeater? What's the idea there? The repeater has a lot of versatility. It can operate on as a base station, and so you can change the channel on the repeater. So if you ever want to use it on as a base station, also in some commercial applications, it could be part of a trunking system where the system operator or the repeater operator has all of his channels stored into the repeater, and he can quickly on the fly change the repeater to a different port, an RxTX port on their transmit combiner receiver multicoupler system. So this is a convenient way of putting more than one channel versus having to program it all up every time. So it supports up to 16 channels, and as I alluded to, it will work in base station mode, it will work in repeater mode, or it will work in aux mode. Okay, auxiliary mode is a mode that is not used too often, but it allows for you to set the repeater up and become effectively a slave to an external radio controller. Typically that's used in commercial applications, not so much in amateur radio. It's got a built-in PL decoder encoder that does PL, privacy line is the Motorola speak for CTCSS. You often hear these tones run around like 107.2, 110.9, 141. I think it's .1. My memory fails me on that. So it does encode and decode PL. It also can encode and decode a DCS or DPL. It can do one of those. And also it has a built-in CWID or a station ID. Dual cooling fans, supports connection to an external DC source like a battery or an external supply. And at the same time, it has a 25-pin accessory connector on the back that you can then use to connect to an external controller, like an RC. In the amateur radio world, we're talking about like an RC210 or a CAT. The SCOM comes to mind, and even in the commercial space, you can connect it to an LTR controller or an external tone panel that does multiple tones. Now this repeater is a community repeater. It can decode and encode multiple PL tones in operation, obviously one at a time. So it's pretty versatile. We've been shipping this since about 2012. And it's used quite a bit all over the place, and a lot of hams are using them. So anyway, we've got one here, and I am going to set one up. Now, as I've said in the show notes here, I was hoping to get some audience participation. So if one of you guys that's using an analog repeater in your area could just share with me the call sign or where you're located, I want to use that to program up the repeater and the radio. So I'm going to throw that out to the floor, give a few minutes, and I'll pick one. I see that somebody's in Poughkeepsie, New York. Stephen, Mesa, Jim, Jim, K2JNL in Mesa. Give me a repeater that you talk on analog. And I'm gonna set this up, a UHF repeater, or 70 centimeter, more specifically. Take a bit of, I know there's a little lag here, so. Anybody got one? I'm gonna pick the first one that comes up on the screen here. If not, I'll just randomly go out there and find one. And we'll keep the ball rolling here. But I was hoping we could set up a repeater, like as if you, let's say your club said, hey, we want to buy a repeater. And what we often ask is, okay, here's our receive transmit frequency, here's our PL tone in and out, here's our station ID, TX power level. Sometimes these repeaters are dialed way back to feed an external PA. In other words, they function as an exciter. Anybody? Okay. I don't see anybody commenting on a repeater that I could put out. Okay, well, I'm going to go in and pick one then. So what I'm going to do is go to repeaterbook.com and just find an analog repeater. So I'm jumping to computer, and go to repeaterbook.com, and I'm going to look for repeaters in North America. Okay, oh, wait, I got one finally. Rodney Myers. Cool. Rodney, what's the call sign on that? I'll put it all in. Okay. Wait, Scott Terry, he plugged in W8 BCI. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. So what I'm going to do. Yeah. Okay. So let's go into Michigan, Lansing, Michigan. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and. I'll tell you what, we'll do both of you guys, Scott Terry and Rodney Myers. You guys both plugged in your credentials. Also, Rodney, WB4 GBI, tell me where that's located. I'm going to start off with Scott Terry. He said he's in Lansing, Michigan. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to Repeater Book, and I'm going to just go up here to Michigan, and hopefully he's got his repeaters in Repeater Book. So there's Lansing right there. Okay, we'll add there. Okay, let me make sure I don't lose him. He's at full. Scott Terry. Okay, so Scott Terry is in Lansing, and we want W. See, Lansing, oh no, Columbus, Georgia. Okay, you guys are, there's just trying to, okay, right, okay, Columbus, Georgia. Let's go there then. And Scott Terry, Columbus, Georgia. Let's go back out. Scott Terry's in Columbus, Georgia, and can you go back, is there a way to scroll back down to see what the call sign was for him?
What, Scott Terry?
Yeah.
Scott Terry, W8 BCI.
W8
BCI.
Okay. So let's go to Columbus, Georgia. Now, I don't see him. Okay, W4CVY. There it is right there, open, FM. Okay, cool. We're going to use this one. All right. W4CVY. I knew we'd get one going here. So let's do this. Okay, so we're going to program this repeater for the credentials here for Whiskey 4, Charlie, Victor, Yankee. The location is Columbus, Georgia, on the Whiskey X-Ray Tango X-Ray Tower. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and hopefully it's going to pop up with some information. Okay, so we can then, the downlink is your transmit frequency. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to just populate this here. So he's at 442.1 on the transmit of the repeater, and the uplink is usually 5 megahertz off on UHF stuff, 447.1. Okay, and they're using a PL tone of 123.0, so they're in and out. So they're using a PL tone of 123.0 on the in and 123.0 on the out, and the station ID, as he stated, is Whiskey 4 Charlie Victor Yankee. So Whiskey 4 Charlie Victor Yankee. And the transmit power is, well, we'll go ahead and put it at 40 watts, just because that's not usually indicated. They just talk about a range. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to program up this BCR 40 as if we are going to put this on the air for this repeater. So we've got our credentials now, and now we want to use the Repeater Personality Programmer. Okay, and I'm going to switch. I'm still on the computer here, and I'm going to run this app that we have called the BCR Repeater Programmer. And here you have it. We're going to create a new profile, and we're going to do a BCR 40UA. The A version is the 400 to 470. We also offer a B version, which encompasses what's called T-band, which runs from 450 to 450 to 520. And then you can clearly see there's other models as well, but we're going to go ahead and use this. I don't want to put a password on it. Okay, so now I have my 16 channels here on the left, and I want to left double click on channel 1, and I'm going to put in, this is the alpha tag, and I'm going to call it Whiskey 4 Charlie Victor, I believe is that right? Charlie Victor Yankee. Yeah, let me just double check. Yep, Charlie Victor Yankee. Yep. Okay. Okay, remote access code. This is a PIN code that you can just assign to your repeater for the sysop. The repeater does support remote DTMF functionality. There's some commands that you can set up, like changing hang timers. You can change PL tones, turn on and off users remotely. I normally set this to 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on how to remotely program it DTMF wise, but that's the setting. Okay, so now we're over to the broadcast ID, and this is going to be Whiskey. The same. I'll just use the same. What I put there is the alpha tag, Whiskey 4 Charlie Victor Yankee. And this is an amateur repeater, so I'm going to set the CWID update interval to 10 minutes. And the Morse code rate for amateurs maxes out at 20 words per minute. The repeater you can set it up for up to 25 words per minute, which is permissible in the commercial area of the spectrum, but in this case, we're going to leave it at 20 words per minute. So what this means, and this is extremely important if you're going to use the internal station ID, is that the repeater, if there's been activity within the last 10-minute window, it will send out a station ID. And this is in Morse code. Okay, and I'll probably, just in the interest, maybe if later if we have time, I'll back that off to 1 minute so that you can actually hear that, the repeater, doing that. Now, there's another, if you come back here to the programming, there's going to be this checkbox here. It says broadcast activity independent. Okay, now you check this if you want the repeater to ID every 10 minutes regardless of activity, because you're only supposed to you only have to ID if there's been activity. Okay, but this way, if you check this thing's going to ID every 10 minutes in this case all the time, no matter what. Okay, so some people just like to hear that. Okay, the repeater is a wide and narrow band repeater. In amateur radio, we're not required to do narrow banding. That's only for commercial. If you recall, 2011 narrow band mandate came down from FCC, prevents repeaters from 450 to 470, excluding GMRS for operating in the using 25 kilohertz channels. So you can see that by default we come out at 450, and you cannot program a repeater at 25 kilohertz in that space any longer. So if we move down here, we want our receive frequency to be 447.1, and we want our transmit frequency to be 442.1. And you can see now that it moved over to 25 kilohertz. Okay. Now another setting is the power level. This is an arbitrary value that's assigned to setting the power. This number ranges from 0 to 995. It has no correspondence to the actual power level that's out there. In other words, it's not a linear function. Like if I put 400 there, that does not equal 40 watts. It's just an arbitrary level, and it allows for me to have multiple channels as the repeater does, it supports 16 channels, and I can have different power settings for each channel. So I'm gonna leave it at 100 for now, and then I'm gonna show you guys quick how I align the repeater for the transmitting. Now I want the pre-emphasis to be on. The pre-emphasis, the reason why there's a checkbox here is because the repeater by itself will support pre-emphasizing. This gives you that nice crisp audio that you hear through a repeater. Now if it wasn't checked, you'll hear the voice will sound kind of bassy. It's not pleasant to a lot of people, but when pre-emphasis on, it sounds crisp. Now, why do I have a checkbox here? Well, it's possible I want this off and I let the external controller handle pre-emphasis. So you got to keep in mind, you're dealing with a lot of different moving parts. I mean, sometimes people think, oh, repeaters just, repeats. No, there's a lot going on, believe me. I mean, you've got a lot of things to consider. It may do a simple function like repeating audio, but there's, they can get pretty sophisticated in terms of how you want them to operate. So continuing, we do have a TX timeout timer. It's in seconds, so 240 seconds equals 4 minutes. So, or 0 disables it. And the reason why you'd want to disable it is it's possible that you could set that up to where the external controller manages the TX timeout. I like to keep it around 244 minutes. Most people, I know people talk for a long time. 204 minutes is good enough for this demonstration. The next setting is called the courtesy tone delay. Okay, this is a field that I put in here so that when a person is done talking, the transmitter will stay keyed up for this delay so that the radio, when it unkeys, it turns around and goes into transmits, and then it'll hear the courtesy tone. For whatever reason, this is something that the amateurs wanted. I put that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that at like 600 milliseconds. So this will give opportunity for the transmitter to key down. I'm sorry, for the radio to key down, and then the transmitter to wait 600 milliseconds and then send out a courtesy tone so that you know you've released the repeater. The next setting we're going to look at is the COS settings. This is for the external controller that's attached. The valid signal is, well, let me back up. The COS is called carrier operated switch, or it's sometimes called core or carrier operated relay. This is typically a voltage that goes up and down, and in our case it's an active low signal. And what this means is if it's set for carrier, that this line will go low when the receiver picks up a carrier, and then it goes high when the carrier's gone. And what this does is it indicates to an external peripheral that there's activity. Now this is programmable in that you could set it for valid signal, and what that means is that if there's a valid PL tone detected, then I can go low. And what that tells the external peripheral, like an RC210 or a CAT or an SCOM or an RLC, is it says, hey, I got something here coming in. I've decoded a PL tone, and now you need to do whatever it is you do. So it's an indicator. So I usually set this for valid signal because most of the time we don't want to bother the external peripheral or anything like that unless we've got something worth looking at, because sometimes you'll pick up stray RF and the carrier is flopping around for whatever reason. Okay, another feature of setting up the transmitter is what's called Csq Repeat. Now, if that box is checked, that means that Csq stands for carrier squelch. So if there's any carrier that comes into the receiver of the repeater, it's going to transmit, okay? And sometimes and that's what's often called an open repeater, or and I know it means open meaning it's open to everybody. No, in this case it's going to just repeat on any carrier. The reason why privacy line or PL was invented was as a means to squelch activity, is that there's a lot of RF potentially, and you don't want the repeater just transmitting on any kind of stray RF that could come through, either from interference or adjacent channels or anything like that. So there are there's rural areas where there's not RF concerns. You could run a Csq repeater, no problem, and we've done that. The next one is the cooling fan operations. Depending on your location, you could run your cooling fans on transmit only, or you could run them continuously. If you're in an environment where it's pretty warm, you might want to run them all the time. The life cycle on these fans in here are 60,000 hours, which I think is, I don't know, 6 to 10 years. They last a long time. But I'm only going to do TX only in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK because I've set up my channel. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to set up the PL tone, and in this case we're at 123.0 for transmit and receive. We've done the station ID, and we'll work on the power here when we hook it up to the service monitors. So I'm going to start with user slot 1. Okay, you notice over here we've got 23 or 24 slots if you include slot 0, which is dedicated to the system operator. These slots are for the PL tones. Okay, now as I stated earlier, this is a community repeater. In other words, it can decode multiple tones. Now, for amateur radio folks, you all just use one tone for the repeater. You rarely see a multiple tone repeater in amateur radio. I don't think I've seen one. But in this case, we just want one tone, and the system operator could have his own unique tone as well. That's what that remote pin was for, so you can set up a PL tone exclusive for him to be able to manage the repeater independent of all the channel activity. So let's left click on user 1 and bring up the credentials for setting this up. Now, I'm going to set this alpha tag to 123.0. Okay, it is an active tone, it is CTCSS, and I'm going to go to this drop down menu, and these are all the tones that this repeater supports. So we're going to just drop down. 123 is a standard tone, so we're going to set that up for receive. Okay, we do have DCS. We're not going to use that now, so you could set up a DCS repeater, which a lot of the GMRS folks use. And then we've got 123 on the transmit, or we could set it up for carrier only. Okay, but we want PL tone of 123.0 in and out. Okay, courtesy tone, let's just go ahead and set up 1000 Hertz courtesy tone. By default, oftentimes I'll put a 1 second hang time. And then you've got this other feature here called include tone and tail. This isn't used that often, but what tone and tail means is that means that the PL tone is going to be present during the 1 second hang time. Because what happens oftentimes is when the radio, when a call comes into a repeater, it raises up the repeater, and then of course the user speaks. When he lets go of the transmitter, because the COS setting is such that it drops on valid signal, that squelches the transmitter, or the audio to the transmitter. The transmitter stays keyed up for 1000 milliseconds, or actually in this case it's going to stay keyed up for 600 milliseconds. The courtesy tone is going to go out, then it's going to hang for a second. For that second time, that one period, if that tone and tail checkbox is checked, you're going to have the PL tone present during that time. Now, why would you do that? Well, this gives opportunity for people to create what's like a seamless conversation where the repeater is not taking any break to key the transmitter back up. So it makes the repeater respond appear to respond very quickly to calls in and out. One of the things that oftentimes happens with repeaters is, when you key them up, how quickly do they decode your PL tone, and how quickly do they drop the call? And sometimes there's an argument, it's been going around forever, and I'll just use this radio real quick, is that, in public safety, we used to talk about the shoot, don't shoot, and the guy keys up the mic and he says, don't shoot. Well, because the repeater took a while, all the guy on the other end heard was shoot. And of course you just about imagine. So we always talk about that. So you got to key up the mic or key up your handheld, pause for a moment sometimes, and then speak. It's just, you figure that out over time. But when you've got this tone and tail, it creates this thing, it creates it like it's a faster response, and the repeater doesn't have to, your handhelds on the other side don't have to take time to decode the PL. And I hope I'm making sense. I mean, I'm kind of throwing a lot of experience at you guys very quickly, but I'm sure if you guys have been working analog repeaters for a while, I think you kind of know what I'm talking about. I mean, repeaters have behavior, they have personality, and a lot of it has to do with how they're programmed. So I'm going to leave that off because it's just, you don't really need it, but if you want to create a better experience, that's something to work on. Okay, so this repeater is ready to program. I'm ready to set this up, and I've got the programming cable that I use. That's actually the radio programmer. This is the repeater programmer, and I have already checked, and I am on COM port 4, and I'm going to program this repeater. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over here to the front of the repeater, and I'm going to get my cable here. Okay, and I'm going to, so you got this mic program port. This is where you put the programming. Okay, so this is where you program the front panel of the repeater, and I'm going to jump back in the computer real quick, and I'm going to start the process here. Okay, so now it's dumping this information into the repeater. It puts it into the receive module first, and then it puts it into the transmit module. Okay, so once that's complete, I'm going to jump over here to the computer. I'm sorry, to the repeater. Okay, now I'm going to disconnect that because I don't need that anymore. So just looking at the repeater, okay, I'm going to turn the channel. You see W4CVY, that it's already there. Okay, and you can see I can go to bass mode. There's 123 because you can make this a bass, and then you can turn on and off your speaker settings from the front panel. This is the single note icon is the front panel speaker. The sine wave is the rear panel speaker, or the rear speaker jack. It puts out to a 10 watt output. That turns both of them on, and that turns both of them off. So there, I'm going to leave that on. Okay, and I'm going to put it back in repeater mode. And now what I want to do is I want to go into the alignment menu, and I'm going to leave my squelch at 3. Okay, I'm not going to tune the receiver right now, but I am going to tune the transmitter. Squelch hysteresis, this allows us to set the repeater such that it opens at, we want the repeater to open at 12 dB, I'm sorry, yeah, we want it to open at 12 dB SINAD and close at 8 dB SINAD. So the squelch setting and the squelch hysteresis allows for us to set those two parameters. And that's, this repeater's receiver's got really good sensitivity. Okay, the RX voice gain is not a setting that's used that much, but it helps in terms of the decode of the DTMF. The RX sub gain, we generally leave at 4. This is a setting between 1 and 7. This is something that is used often in amateur radio because we sometimes find that a lot of radios don't come out of the factory. They over deviate on their sub-audible. So this allows for us to optimize the repeater's performance to work with a lot of different radios. Phase reversal detect, the repeater does support phase reverse detect, but it's not used in amateur radio at all, and that's called reverse burst, and we don't do that. We just drop the tone and then leave a hang time. Okay, the RX power is what we're going to set. So I've got a nice 142 cable here, double shielded, and I'm going to hook this to the service monitor here. That's why I brought the service monitor into the demonstration. And then we're going to set the power level to 40 watts, okay? And I've got it hooked up. These are, the repeater has N-type connectors on both the receive and transmit. N-type female, that is, so I've got an N-type male cable. So I'm going to go ahead and press and release the select knob, which allows for me to turn on the transmitter, okay? So I'm keyed up, and you can see there's no power coming out, so I'm going to increase this level. Okay, so there's 3 watts, 3.5. Let's see how low it goes, where it just drops off. It's a MOSFET. Okay, so there, that setting there, just the gate, the knee of it got hit, and it just fell off. Okay, so there, the lowest setting about 3 watts. Okay, you can see we're on 442.1, very, 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 very close. So let's bring it up to 40 watts. And this is why you want a power meter when you do all your settings. Okay, and you can hear the fans running. And we want to go to 40 watts. Okay, there's 40 watts, right about there, okay? Pretty stable. Okay, so that's at a 650 setting. Okay, then I've got my TX voice deviation here, and this allows for us to make sure we don't go past 5 kilohertz. We've got a coarse setting here, and then we've got a fine tuning setting. We've got our TX sub deviation, a coarse setting, and a fine tuning sub deviation setting. And I'm going to show you that real quick. We use, and when we set these repeaters up, we use a 100 hertz PL tone into the transmitter to test. So I'm going to key it up right now, and I want you to see it. Okay, so this setting right here, there's your 100 hertz tone, and we're deviating at right now at about 680 hertz. You can see that, I hope. I'm going to bring that down to just right around 500. And this is what we set these up for when we get these going. That's a pretty good number. Between 500 and 600 is enough for all these radios to work. Okay, and we're still at 40 watts. We're right on the money there with frequency, so I'm going to key that down. And then we've got this thing called station ID deviation. This allows for you to set your PL tone. I'm sorry, not your PL tone, your station ID. And I'm going to, you can hear, there's your station ID. And we are deviating our station ID at 600, so I just like to bring that up to about 1,000 hertz, or a K, 1 kilohertz. And I'll leave that there. And then I've got this thing called TX frequency tune. And what this allows for you to do is adjust your frequency. Now you can see right here we're at 442.019. I mean, we're like within less than 100 hertz off of what's going on. Now this is at a setting of 129. Now what we're doing is we're adjusting a TCXO voltage to optimize, and I'm going to just bring this down so you can see that how you can adjust this to get it right on the money. Now 127 is pretty much where you want to be right on a brand new repeater. Now you might ask, why do I have this here? Well, as semiconductors and electronics age, they drift. Now the parts have gotten really good these days, and they don't drift as much, but if you're a system operator, this is something you pay attention to as you manage your equipment, because over time sometimes components age, and this allows for you to fine tune. That's why this this tuning here is that you can put this thing back on the money, and it's pretty stable. You know, 131, it puts us, you know, within 1 part per million, or even better than that, so it's really good. Okay. So that gives you that functionality, and then you've got this thing called flash firmware off. It's in the off state or on, because the repeater has firmware. We offer firmware updates, and as the repeater's grown and we've troubleshot issues, so this gives you the functionality. So to exit this menu, we just go back out. So now the repeater is ready to repeat, but what do we use to repeat it with? Okay, so we need to get a radio. So that's why the AnyTone's coming into play. So I'm going to take my AnyTone, and hopefully you all got one of these, and we're going to program up our AnyTone. Actually, I'm going to program it. I'm going to program it for this repeater to show you guys. I'm going to program it right here in front of you by hand, so you can see how, like, if you go into a new area, you're going to be able to program your repeater or your radio. So what we want to do here is we want to put it in the VFO mode, and I believe P2 allows for me to do that. Okay, so P2 moves it from the memory mode to VFO mode. Now that's a programmable button, and I believe this was set earlier in our live streams, so that's how I traverse back and forth between that. Now sometimes it's P1, P2, and I'm going to show you in the CPS how you can change all that. So right now we're on, as you know, the AnyTone is a dual band radio. It can do 2 meter and 440, or 2 meter and 70 centimeter. So we know that the repeater transmits on 442.1. We saw that here. So that's what you want to put in. So I'm going to put in, and we know we're dealing with an analog channel. So let me just go back up here. We can go to the settings, the channel set. We can go to the channel type. It says analog. That's what you want. Okay, we've got this TCDT, RCDT, and RTCDT. Now, transmit, C, TCSS, DCS tone, I think that's what that stands for. And this here allows for you to set both of them at the same time. So I'm going to set this to CTC, which is CTCSS, and I'm going to put this at 123, and I'm going to select that, okay? I'm going to back out, I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to set, let's set our TX power for low, and I'll bring these up and show you how on the service monitor, we'll actually take a peek at the AnyTone. I brought a cable to show you what's going on there so you can see how powerful these little radios are. Okay, and then you got your squelch mode, okay, we are in CDT, bandwidth, wide or narrow. We don't need narrow, we're in amateur radio, so we want wide. And let's set up our transmit frequency of the radio is going to be, let's delete that, it's going to be 4471. Let's press the pound key and that puts all those zeros there. We're going to confirm. Okay, P2 backs you out. Let's go up to receive frequency. Let's delete. This is going to be 442.1. Okay, confirm. Okay, we're going to back out. Let's go back and make sure our receive. Oh, how in the heck? I guess you need to set your receive first. 447. Yeah, you want to make sure you check everything. That's interesting. That changed that after I changed the receive frequency. Okay, so P2 backs you out. Let's go back up and look there. 442, that's good. That's good. Okay, so let's back out here. I think that's all I need to set. Okay, let's back out, exit. Okay, so there I am. Okay, so if I key up my radio here, I should see myself transmitting, or I should, and we're going to look over here at the repeater, and I'll definitely say my call sign here. Okay, and we are on low power. Oh, okay, there you go. It engaged the repeater, so KC0QVT. Okay, you can see there's the courtesy tone, you heard that. Okay, so the receiver and the valid light and the transmit light's going, and the indicating we're transmitting. Also look down here at power level, 41.4. We probably back that down. It looked like it overshot a little bit. And I'm going to mute the speaker here. Okay, so we are repeating and we are programming. So in the interest of just showing you guys, and I'm going to go over here, I'm just going to go back over here to the main screen. I did bring a cable today. And I've got this, I've got a BNC male connector to this adapter, okay? And you guys may have seen this. This adapter will allow for me to replace the antenna. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how these AnyTones look on a service monitor. I'm not going to get into the spectral analysis. I just want you to see the power level. And I'm going to change the power level because oftentimes, you know, you hear a lot of marketing stuff. Oh, it does, you know, it does 7 watts, it does 10 watts and stuff. Well, let's just see what the AnyTone. Now, this AnyTone's got a brand new battery, and I'm going to remove the. I'm going to come over here for you guys. I'm going to remove the antenna, and I'm going to put this on here. Now I'm at low power, so let's just, and I'm going to turn the repeater off so it doesn't repeat while I'm doing this. But I'm going to go ahead and key up the radio. Okay, at low power, this thing's doing 0.28 watts. Okay, it's sending out a 123 tone, and looks like it's deviating about 700 hertz. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the power. I'll do that for you real quick here. I'm going to go to the settings. Now I think we could probably program a you guys want to see what this thing does on turbo? Let's look at turbo. See how great it is. Let's go to turbo. On UHF 5. UHF. Okay, we're on turbo power. Let's see what turbo power is. almost 7 watts. 7 watts UHF. And the PL tone, you see, 5. And it doesn't deviate past 5 kilohertz, which is good. That's what you want. So it's dropped a little bit. You can see it falling just a touch, not bad. So let's do one more setting. Let's look at high power, because that's generally what you see a lot of these radios doing. And TX power, let's go to high power. Okay. Okay, let's see what high power. It should be around 5 watts. Yep, right on the money, 5 watts. Okay, cool. And I'll take the... So there's a little quick snapshot of what these AnyTones do on UHF. 7 watts on turbo power, 5 watts on high power, and about 1/4 of a watt on low power. So we do a lot of our testing on quarter power because we're right in front of the repeater. So I'm going to plug this all back in, and then I'm going to key up and just show you guys how the repeater does real quick. Okay, so there I'm deviating around 500 hertz, which is good. 5. Now my tone, I want my VFM deviation to be a little higher than that. So what I do is I want to set it for, and this is how you can do it with your radio, because we know the radio is putting out 5, right at around 5 kilohertz max. It's limiting there. So we're going to do the same thing with our voice. So here I'm going to key this up. 5, and you can see 5. Now that's a little bit hot. 5, yeah, right about there. And this is how you set your transmit deviation. And then we got to put it back on frequency there. KC0QVT radio service test. I notice our... So let's just check our power level here. It's a brand new repeater, so it's just come out of the box. We just put it together. So we're just fine tuning some stuff. So there you go. All right. Well, so going to our notes, we've I don't want to, we're about 50 minutes into the live stream. I was going to jump into the computer, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here with that, because I think we got more live streams on our way for connecting the AnyTone to a repeater. I'm excited about doing this for you. But this is it. When you guys key into a repeater, and it doesn't matter whether it's ours or anybody else, but this is really what's going on. You can see the challenges. It's pretty involved a subject. I mean, you got service monitors, you got dummy loads, you've got RF cables, you've got feed line. You got to align the repeater. It's not just, hey, go throw that repeater on the air and hope and pray. I mean, there's a lot of things going on to make sure that you guys get a good experience. So if you guys got a repeater trustee in your club, pat the guy on the back. I mean, he's got his hands full. And, we talk to these folks all the time. And then, of course, if you're enjoying your radio, I mean, this is what, the experience that you get is going through a repeater. Now, I've just demonstrated analog, but again, these repeaters, and like a lot of these repeaters y'all use, they can be connected to digital. We got this, as you know, your DMR stuff. So, James is duplexer. Yeah, in the UHF or the 70 centimeter, we can put a duplexer inside the unit. Okay, it's a mobile style flat pack, and I'll bring one of those in on another show and show you guys what a duplexer is all about. Those can get pretty sophisticated anyway, but just a duplexer allows for the receiver and transmitter to use one feed line to the antenna that goes up the tower. It cuts down on cost. Feed line's not cheap, but having one feed line, one antenna, the duplexer is the filtering device that keeps the transmit and receive frequency separated so that the repeater can operate without being affected by either receiver or transmitter. And I'm looking at your questions. I don't see a whole lot. Jim, K2JNL, thank you for the comments. We're just scratching the surface here, but I wanted you guys to see a repeater brought up from scratch and then your radio programmed to talk to it. But this is what's going on. With that, have a great Wednesday. Have a great week. 7-3, my friends.